Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from me and
Aidan.
or
Aidan.
Aidan, mashallah. So Aidan's joining us today. As you can see, we're in the background. We've got Speaker's Corner here. So we've got Mr. J. Smith over there, and we've got Trinitarian shaking away his whatever you call them. Anyway, so Aidan's actually his trip is coming to an end in London. He's going back to
Oxford, yeah.
Oxford, inshallah. When are you leaving, bro?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow. So by the time this video is up, guys, Aidan will already be back in Oxford. Please keep him in your du'as, inshallah. So what we'd like to do in this video basically is just to touch base with Aidan himself. So what I would like to do, Aidan, if possible, inshallah, is if we could just speak to the viewers about what it was, you know, in a nutshell, that led you towards, number one, coming to Speaker's Corner, number two, your inquisitions about Islam.
Sure, yeah. So I first heard about Speaker's Corner essentially through like online, all the YouTube videos. And I remember, I'm sure I have seen videos of you like in the past.
Alhamdulillah.
Usually debating with the Christians.
Alhamdulillah.
I was generally involved in Christianity. I mean, I can't really say I was like incredibly devout, but there was something about the Trinity which I generally didn't understand, in the sense that it's essentially three gods in one, and essentially the oneness of God in Islam is generally what brought me to Islam.
Back to it, inshallah, yeah? What kind of feelings would you say that you felt as you came to Speaker's Corner when you were hearing what you were hearing? You know, the inquisitions you had about Islam, if it was an Arabized religion, for example, the answers and responses, you know, the whole vibe of the place. What did you feel when you were around?
So at first, I was generally unsure of like who I was sort of around. But it was when, I think it was you pointed out all the different nationalities of all the brothers around us.
Yeah.
And then with that, I started to feel a connection. Because I realized it's not just an Arab religion, but it's a religion, a universal religion for all people.
Yeah,
and then from that, I became more indulged. And then I sort of began to like recognize where I sort of was in that.
Where you stood.
Where I stood,
the whole scheme of things. Alhamdulillah. And so after we had our little talk, alhamdulillah, myself and a few people, we left. And a few people accompanied you, invited you to sit down in a restaurant over a meal.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your feelings and your thoughts and experiences over that situation there?
Yeah, so essentially they were going through mostly the scientific miracles in the Quran, and essentially telling me, sort of bringing me on like the pathway to Islam, essentially for saying like, it's like they said it was like as if I was drowning and I have to wake up to see the light and to know which way is up and which way is down, to know which way is the correct path. Yeah. And that was I can't remember the how can I say the correct
meaning?
I can't remember there's like this kind of story behind it. Okay. But to me that really stood out.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
And then that's what.
So it was about the drowning aspect.
And then waking myself up. Yeah.
So when you did finally take your shahada, you know, you took your declaration of faith, as many of us have seen it on video, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Could you please tell us how you felt?
Liberated. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Completely refreshing. Yeah. New self, yeah.
So going home that day, that night, what kind of feelings, what kind of premonitions or ideas did you have after that?
Well, at first I thought, I'm going to have to completely change my life around. I was kind of like, where do I start? Where do I begin? Like, I kind of felt like on the spot, but then I realized it could be a process. Like, I don't need to immediately become a completely, different person. I mean, I can still be the same person as I am in Islam, but it can be a process and it can be a journey which eventually builds up, and I become more knowledge in Islam, and it can just be a process. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So now we're talking a few days after that. Alhamdulillah, we sat down in the masjid. Myself and Abdulhamid, we went to the masjid, and we spoke to you about wudu and how you conduct yourself for the prayer.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how you felt about, well, even before the wudu, you actually heard the adhan before you did the wudu? No, actually it was after. So let's talk about the wudu itself.
Yeah.
So upon completing the wudu, how did you feel?
Refreshed, purified. I was generally aware of it, but I didn't realize how.
You haven't actually done it in practice.
Yeah, I hadn't done it, and I didn't realize how much detail like you have to like go in, and again, it's really like purifying. Like when you go into a church, you don't do wudu.
Yeah.
So, but with But before going into prayer in the mosque, yeah.
So upon completion of the wudu, then we went and we were trying to prepare a place so we could sit down and talk and vocalize our next part of the actual video basically. And you had the adhan, didn't you?
Yeah.
You had the call to prayer.
Yeah.
How did that feel for you? How did it sound to you? What did it mean to you when you heard that?
It's like an aura, essentially calling upon my duty to prayer, and really indulges you in the moment to prayer. Of course, I don't know Arabic, so I don't know exactly what it's saying.
We can go through that.
We can go through that. But yeah, it really creates that aura that you're again, you have to fulfill your duty to prayer.
Alhamdulillah. So one part of the actual video that we weren't able to cover was the salah inside the masjid, inside the prayer hall itself, the actual prayer.
Yeah.
So could you tell us, how did it feel? What kind of thoughts were on your mind as you were walking into the prayer? How did it feel to stand united with your brothers and bow down to the same Lord, and be in the same prayer together? How did it feel, if anything?
It was really meditative in the sense that everyone was like really peaceful. It was generally quiet, and then you feel a real like sense of like bond and connection. Again, it's not something you would necessarily experience in a church where you're just kind of sat down, but you're actually standing, you're doing all the same motions, you're all going through it at the same time, and it really like builds that kind of connection.
Alhamdulillah. So I mean, the last part of that day, before we we actually had a meal, but before we had the meal, how did it feel when we were speaking, for example? So we went through with Aidan about the 5 pillars of Islam, and we spoke to him about the pillars of Iman as well, so the 6 pillars of Iman. We didn't go into it too much, and then we spoke to you actually about, we'll go into that in a minute. So how did you feel upon hearing about the infrastructure of our religion, about the pillars of faith, for example?
Yeah, again, I was generally aware of them, but I wasn't like 100% like knowledgeable, and I'm still learning about them.
Yeah.
But the structure as well. Again, it's actually like it's simple for every person to come. Like there's no like you don't have to abide by like really strict like laws like in Judaism. Everything is like about laws, but it's like a really like simple I wouldn't say like a pattern, but it's just general things that you come to accept.
Alhamdulillah. So after that, last but not least, I asked you if you were interested in adopting a Muslim name for yourself.
Oh yeah.
And it was then that you prompted me to find out if Aidan was actually in the Quran.
Yeah.
So how did you feel when your name was actually mentioned inside the Quran?
In the Quran.
Subhanallah.
I was generally aware that it meant something in Arabic.
Yeah.
I think I might have like researched that before.
Yeah.
But I never knew that it was in the Quran in that particular context.
Yeah. So
that was surprise for me. Really
and so for anyone who hasn't seen the video previously where we actually spoke about the meaning of Aidan or Aidan, which is in the Quran, Aidan actually means perpetuity, and this is used to refer to tall palm trees, and this is what we found. Alhamdulillah. Wallahu Akbar. So Alhamdulillah. So your name is Aidan. Now, what I would like to do, so obviously after today, we'd like to invite you as well to come and have a meal with us. I think there's quite a few brothers that have come to Speaker's Corner today, actually specifically for you.
Oh yeah.
Alhamdulillah, which is great. You've prayed with us in the park as well.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
I really like that. Again, because it's in even though it's in quite a harsh conditions.
It's in nature, right?
Yeah, it's in nature. Yeah. So again, it really sort of puts you in the moment.
Oh, zoned in.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you could just leave some final thoughts on our viewers, for anyone that maybe has some interest in knowing more about our religion, or maybe they are just on the fence and they actually just need that little push forward in order to accept Islam.
Right.
What could you tell our viewers out there, inshallah, anyone watching this video, from your own experiences?
I would say if you want to become a Muslim but you're not entirely sure, just remember it's a process, and that essentially you build upon your knowledge as you go, and then eventually you will come to a state where you will be more knowledgeable in that of Islam. And again, you don't need to learn everything on the spot, but it's a process and will take time. It might take weeks, months, maybe even years. So I would just say go with the process as it goes, and you'll learn as you go along.
I want to ask a thought-provocative question.
Okay.
For our viewers out there, inshallah, God willing, and for anyone else who's actually inquisitive, So in the media, obviously, before you came to Islam, I mean,
Yeah.
you would have probably heard that Muslims are associated with terrorism, ISIS, killing, death threats, bombs, suicide bombs, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
How much of that could you agree with, and how much of that could you disagree with in comparison to what you have already experienced as a Muslim, just for a few days, your very first impressions as a Muslim standing here with us, and the experiences you've had over the past few days with us as Muslims?
Right. Well, I would say that Muslims that do commit acts of terrorism, they don't know their own religion. Most of them might have possibly like mental disabilities, and again, they don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, they're generally a lot of them will grow up in like really like harsh, rough conditions.
Brainwash.
Yeah, brainwashed essentially.
Politics.
And what have you actually found from the people, the brothers that you've met at the corner, and wherever else since you actually took your Shahada, and while you were in the process of taking your Shahada, what have you found from us in general?
All caring people, not bad people. I mean, when I was at school, I did know Muslim people, and they would say things like, "Oh, if I wasn't a Muslim, yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that," and I got like a kind of wrong impression of Islam. Like it was like it was as if they didn't want to be like Muslim, like because when they would say like, "Oh, I would do this, I would do that," if I wasn't a Muslim, it would usually be in context to like drugs, violence, and that kind of thing. So at that, when I was at school, I generally got a wrong impression. But now that I've learned more and I've actually like met other Muslims, not in a school environment, I've come to know that all Muslims are generally caring people.
Allahu Akbar. Can we give a takbir for the brother here? Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. So from our brothers here at Speaker's Corner, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.